So I am going to go ahead and introduce our presenter today. It's Dr. Erin Presant, who is a movement disorder specialist who has specialized training in DBS, deep brain stimulation, Parkinson's, essential tremor, and dystonia. She was with a professor at UCLA and more recently a co-owner now for a private movement disorders practice where she is serving over 500 patients along the central coast of Florida, or not Florida, that's where I'm at, California. She is a physician that's also pursuing culinary medicine through Tulane University to help her incorporate preventative medicine in her medical practice by teaching her patients about the relationship of food and cooking in their medical diagnosis. So we are going to be talking about food, how to eat, what to eat, and why this is so important. So Dr. Presant, I'm going to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to you. I know that she does have a PowerPoint that we're going to start off with. Again, if you have questions during the PowerPoint, feel free to put those in the chat. All right, Dr. Presant, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Am I muted, or you guys can hear me?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. Well, thank you for the introduction, and I will just go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint here. We'll get started with that, but that was really kind of more as a guidance, just to make sure I cover what some of the things I wanted to cover. But I also think that it might be good to listen to what your questions are, because there are going to be a lot of questions that are probably more specific than what I cover. So I'll definitely be, so as you know, this has been a very challenging time for everybody. So I think one of the most important things right now is to really focus on what you're doing right, because we focus a lot on the problems that everyone's having, and I can't get it right, and I can't do this, and it's so hard to do this. And I think even once a day or twice a day or all day, you need to just be asking yourself, what are you doing right? So did you eat a vegetable today? Did you eat a fruit? Did you sit down at a table with somebody that you're quarantined with, or did you Zoom or FaceTime with family and eat a meal? Were you able to get on that Zoom meeting to participate in a virtual exercise class or take a walk? These are all things you're doing right. So if you did one of those things, give yourself a big pat on the back, because all the guilt that we all have right now about not being able to do enough, not being able to be active enough, not eating the right things, it's probably counterproductive, and it's probably going to make your motor symptoms and your Parkinson's symptoms worse, just all that extra stress that you don't need. So as most of you are well aware of, eating with Parkinson's can already be complicated. You have a lot of different things that you are needing to deal with, including your, possibly losing your sense of smell. Maybe difficulty with swallowing, maybe some depression and difficulty getting going and finding the right foods and wanting to eat. Also the GI issues of constipation. Those things can make it really, really difficult for you to want to go eat. So, you didn't need anything else to make it a little bit more complicated. And unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. So I think one of the questions I get a lot is there a Parkinson's disease diet? Is there a diet that I should be following? I think we have to kind of start at the basics. And the really short answer is no, there's not a diet that's really been shown to be helpful for Parkinson's, like one specific diet, eliminating gluten or certain things. But we do know that overall, the healthiest type of diet that has been shown in most of the medical literature is really a Mediterranean type of diet. So what does that mean? I mean, I think probably people hear that quite a bit, or that term thrown around, Mediterranean type diet. What is that? What does that mean? So this is kind of, I mean, to put it into our old concept of what food looks like, the old pyramid that we used to see. This is for the Mediterranean diet. So I think there are a couple things that are really important here that we sometimes don't think about as part of our diet. And one of them is that's down at the bottom there, is being physically active and enjoying meals with others. We in America especially, we don't take the time a lot of times to really enjoy meals with others, and that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But something we consider really important in having a healthy diet. And of course, being as active as you can. We all have our different levels of where we can be active. But again, if you're able to if yesterday you didn't move at all, you didn't get up except to go to the bathroom or go to the kitchen, and today you walked out to the mailbox to get your mail, I think that right now focusing on that is really great. Like, I was able to get out and walk to the mailbox. That's great. Setting small, realistic goals in terms of activity is really important. And then if we move up to the next level on this pyramid here, we see that there's a lot of fruits and vegetables and whole grains, nuts, legumes, seeds. And these are the things that I think are going to end up being kind of our staple, especially time, this kind of strange time that we're having where food, you can't go to the grocery store as much as you wanted. And now maybe meat and meat prices are going to go up possibly, or there's going to be a lack of meat. You can find a lot of protein in these sources here, and they're super, super important. The other really important thing, especially in Parkinson's, is that these foods in this category, when eaten whole, have a lot of fiber, and fiber is really good for your gut in a lot of ways. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too, but fiber is really, really good for your gut. So eating the fruit with the skin on, if you're eating an apple, don't peel it. If you're having a zucchini, don't peel it. If you're having a cucumber, don't peel it. Eat the skin too. It's good for your gut. And then moving up to the next level, you have the fish. So in the Mediterranean diet, fish and seafoods more important than other types of meat. And, depending on where you live right now, that may be more difficult to get a hold of than others. If you can buy frozen, you could have it in your house that way. And that could be helpful. And then moving up to the last two notches there in the Mediterranean diet, you have the poultry, dairy, eggs, meats, and sweets. And we want to try to limit those things. I think having chicken, eggs, those kinds of things are better than having a steak. But that being said, having one steak, we want to try to limit it to, red meat once a week if we can. So, if you want to have your hamburger, you want to have a steak, that's okay. Just not every night, maybe. And in Mediterranean diet, a little bit of alcohol. Now that just depends on what medications and that you're taking. And, obviously you want to be careful if you already have some gait problems. If you have a glass of wine, you want to make sure there's, you're safe with that. So if wine's not the right, or alcohol is not the right choice for you for those safety reasons, then drink water. But we don't, the old school food pyramid we used to see, they'd put the glass of milk. We don't really recommend having a glass of milk anymore. That much dairy has really not been found to be that healthy for us. So this is kind of where we're starting. This is like the ideal diet. And I will tell you that as much as I strive for this, this is not what my diet looks like regularly either. So give yourself a break. Again, if you had your fruits and you had your vegetables today, then that's awesome. Try to use fresh herbs and spices, and we can talk about ways you might be able to preserve those longer. So you don't have to go to the grocery store or be spending money on those as much right now. So I kind of went over most of this, and I think, again, I do, and with my patients, I've always emphasized this as well, movement, any kind that you can do. We're all limited, and I really, want to make that point, is that any kind of movement is good. Okay. If you can only sit and you can move your arms, then that's great. Do it. The more you move your body, the more you can move your body, the better you will feel. And it'll help with your constipation and things as well. So again, we want to be safe. And I know right now is very difficult to get out and exercise the way you used to, but do what you can and give yourself a pat on the back for doing what you can, you know? So I know shopping right now is difficult. I actually really like going to the grocery store most of the time. And I will tell you that during this, since this pandemic has started and we've kind of been on lockdown, I find it extremely stressful, and I'm kind of like disoriented, and that's not the way I am in grocery stores at all. I usually like going and browsing and looking at different things. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to get in and I need to get what I need, and I get disoriented and I forget stuff and all this stuff. So the one thing that I've found that has helped, I'm not usually a shopping list kind of person, but making a wish list as to what you want. And I call it a wish list because we know that right now in the grocery store, sometimes you're not going to be able to get exactly what you wanted. But what I found that helps with is if I have rice on my list and the store is out of rice, there may be a substitution that you could make right then. You could say, oh gosh, I've never tried barley, but they have barley. Maybe I could try barley, and it will take a little bit of stepping outside your comfort level, maybe a little bit. But I do think having that wish list helps you to translate what you're looking for and make substitutions a little bit quicker. So if you're ordering on Instacart or one of those other services, and I know they sub for you sometimes if they don't see what's on there. I believe you can, some places I know, like the person that's in the store might call you or text you and tell you they have this stuff. If they can't do that, I think you can put on there what substitutions. If you get a weird substitution, I guess right now, take it as a way to maybe try something new, even though it may not be your favorite, and maybe you wouldn't get that again. Where to get food has also become a little bit more difficult than what it was before. I know places that I shopped a lot, I'm not going to because they're crowded, or the timing doesn't work out, or there's a line, or for whatever reason they're not having the stuff that I need. So I have changed my patterns a little bit too, which I know can be very difficult if you already have like mobility issues, or you're just trying to get somewhere fast and somewhere that I don't know, a lot of people are in very different places. Where I am, we still have our farmers markets open. I think those are good because, or open air, like fruit and vegetable stands, because they are open air, they tend to be less crowded. You can wear a mask. And a lot of those types of places don't have you reaching for the food. They'll package it for you and hand it to you. Another really good option that I think would be great right now are the home meal boxes, like Home Chef, Blue Apron. There are a million of them out there. And if you have, if you are vegan or vegetarian, or you have other preferences, most of those places will accommodate them. And really, it depends on how much you're going to the grocery store and what you usually buy, but they can be relatively cheap. Well, I don't know if cheap, but not expensive. So, and the good part about them is they come in a box, they have all the ingredients, so you don't have to worry about going to the grocery store, and you can make the meal. So if it's just 2 of you in the house, you could order the portion for 4 and have leftovers for 3 nights or something like that. So I think that those ordering meal delivery services right now are something to kind of lean into and do if you can. Lean on friends and family members to shop for you if you do really need something and you can't get out, if you have a friend or a family member who could go shopping for you and leave it on your doorstep, that would be great. I think it is important to find something that's kind of more sustainable for you and your lifestyle right now, because it doesn't seem like things are going to change overnight. You know, I think that this might be a little bit of a long haul here, although things are slowly opening back up, and that's great, but it does seem like maybe we'll be dealing with this a little longer than we had all hoped. So something that's sustainable for you, for your budget, for your level of activity, for where you live as well, is really important. Sometimes people ask about substitutions. I think that obviously fresh is the best. So if you can get a whole fruit, a whole vegetable, do it. And that's what I would focus on in the grocery store if you are. And that's kind of where I go to kind of collect my wits about me in the grocery stores. I kind of go to the produce section. I'm like, all right, what can I do with stuff here? You know, we like broccoli, and we like cilantro, and we like this, and we like that. But they don't have that today. Okay, I look around and I see what other vegetables or fruits I might be able to do something with. I would say, you know, get as much fresh stuff as you can. There are great vegetables that stay for a long time in the fridge. Cabbage, for one. I will tell you that before all of this, I have not loved cabbage, but I have learned how to cook cabbage and stir fry it with lots of different other vegetables that I'm able to get, and spices. So I do think that using spices, you know, even in jars, you can order those on Amazon. You know, if you like spicy stuff, put some spicy stuff on your cabbage. If you like, you know, more different flavors, just put the spices that you like on the vegetable, and it'll spice it up a bit. If you can get fresh, buy fresh. The next best is frozen. I know the grocery stores have been out of the frozen vegetables too sometimes. I'm just starting to kind of see, at least in our grocery stores here, those are kind of being replenished if I go at the right times or whatever. So you might be able to get frozen vegetables. Those are, you know, if you get those and lightly steam them, those are great to eat. Canned vegetables, you need to be a little bit careful about. They oftentimes have added preservatives and salt and things like that that you don't really need and may make you feel worse. So, but if that's what you can get, then do what you can. Maybe rinse them if they have a lot of sodium or something in them. I do think, at least here, again, you know, I know everybody's in different spread out areas, but the canned vegetables have been out more than the frozen vegetables have been recently, so that's good. You know, ways to keep frozen vegetables around, fresh vegetables around, but not in their whole form. You can make pestos and soups out of them. I like these things because they don't require a lot of chopping, and if you have a food processor or a blender or anything like that, you can throw your vegetables in there, make some sort of sauce, and freeze it. And then you can take it out and use a little bit of it. And then you're getting vegetables there. You know, you have to, again, really give yourself a pat on the back for eating that if you do, because you're getting your vegetables there. Soups are also a great way to incorporate vegetables and kind of use them throughout the week maybe, or freeze and use later. Make a big portion and freeze and use later. In terms of fruit, try to eat it with the skin on. As I said, fresh is best. There are frozen fruits that are pretty good. You know, they're just straight frozen berries or something that you could use in smoothies, or even unfreeze and eat if you don't mind them a little mushy, or put them in yogurt, plain yogurt or something like that. Fruit in jars and cans, just watch again for what they're packaged in. Sometimes they can be packaged in a very sugary syrup that can add a lot of calories and a lot of unnecessary sugar to your diet, and may not make you feel very, very good either. Dried fruits are a good option. Just watch for added sugar and preservatives, but a lot of places now sell just like straight dried strawberries or dried berries or something those can also be somewhat good for constipation as well. So those would be an option you could get, and they might keep a little bit longer.
Dr. Presant,
Yeah.
real quick, you had mentioned yogurt, and one of the questions someone chatted was, should yogurt be avoided with Parkinson's? And if not, what type is best?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that, so the evidence for foods to be avoided in Parkinson's is somewhat limited in terms of very specific foods. Generally processed foods, not good. Yogurt or dairy, most dairy, you don't want to eat too much dairy. I think yogurt's okay, a little bit of yogurt. It's a good source of protein. You want to stay away from the yogurts that have like added sugars or syrups at the bottom. I would buy plain yogurt, and you want to go with the lower fat yogurt if you can. Dairy is the one place I would say that organic is probably worth buying just based on the evidence, although I will say that the evidence remains a little bit spotty about that. But I do tell my patients that if you're going to choose organic somewhere, I think dairy is one place that you should try to abide by that. I would get, maybe put that dried fruit in your yogurt with a little bit of honey if you want that. Or the frozen fruits, you can even defrost and put that in yogurt as well with a little bit of honey. Maybe even some granola or oats or something too. So hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you.
The other substitutions, I think sometimes we, again, just go to the grocery store and buy the same thing that we've always bought over and over. You can start thinking a little bit, maybe now's the time to start thinking a little bit more about whole grains and where you could get a whole grain. What kind of bread are you buying? Are you buying the white bread? The funny part is, in my grocery stores, the white bread has been all sold out, but the other breads with like the nuts and seeds and things in them are still on the shelf. So buy it, give it a try. They're actually really good. They count as your whole grains, which on that Mediterranean diet pyramid is really important. Those whole grains are really, really important. If you're, you live somewhere where tortillas are around a lot, or you like tacos, or you like burritos, try to get flour. Corn tortillas rather than flour. Corn rather than flour, sorry. Because the corn is considered a whole grain. Flour tortillas are often made with lard and added things. So if you are gonna have a taco night, grab some corn tortillas. Those freeze well as also, which is great for right now when we're trying to limit how much we go to the store. Really do your best to try to limit your process in the store. I know we're all wanting those processed foods right now. Trust me, I'm a snacker too. I like chips. I'm less sweet, go for more of the salty food and less sweet foods. So when I'm in the grocery store, I like to go for that chip aisle, and that's why I reroute myself to the veggie aisle so that I don't grab all those chips. So really try to limit the processed foods. Again, though, if you have some crackers or some chips or something, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the guilt. Maybe look at the back of the bag, see what the serving size is, and grab 15 chips out of them, put them in a bowl, and walk away. Don't take the bag with you, because then we just sit there and eat. So that's another way you can kind of get away from that. And this leads right into, I think, one of the most important things when we do eat is mindful eating. So what does that even mean? Well, stress eating, which is sitting down with that bag of chip and watching the coronavirus task force, is that's what stress eating is. And none of us need to be doing that right now. So many things wrong with that picture, but we do it, and we all do it. Nobody's perfect. So try not to do that, though. Or if you're going to sit down and you're going to have some chips, again, try to pull out the serving size and think about what you're eating. That makes it a more mindful process. You can make substitutions. So you're really, the more you can actually think about what you're putting in your body, it becomes a much more mindful process, which is really, really important. It's part of the Mediterranean diet because they do less, at least the traditional Mediterranean diet and their society does less of this on the run eating or sitting in front of the TV eating, and try to really incorporate that as part of the culture. And that becomes very important. I think, conserving ingredients, the mindful eating works really well with that, because we're all trying to conserve right now. I mean, my kids are on a ration with the eggs. You get one, that's it. We're not having 2 eggs today, But maybe it makes you savor the meal more. So if you made something you really like, sit down at a table or wherever you can sit and be safe and comfortable and enjoy it. Turn off the TV, put your phone to the side, and maybe put on some music or sit with somebody that you're quarantined with, or don't put your phone away if you're going to FaceTime with somebody, Zoom with somebody, or have, a family member there to talk to you while you eat. It's very, very important. Make a meal an event and not something you do because you're bored. And right now, unfortunately, the boredom, I think, is really creeping in. Maybe like the first few weeks, all this was a novelty and we were all kind of figuring it out, like, what do we need to do? And now the boredom, the boredom is here. We're all tired of this, and maybe the weather's changing. It's different every day, and you just want to get out. You want to be able to do what you used to do. And so the boredom moves in. And so it's natural to move to things that might comfort you, which might be a chocolate bar, chips, I don't know, whatever it is for you. But try not to do that. I like to tell people, if you're bored, try to move. Do what you can that is safe for you. If, going for a walk isn't an option for you, or it's too much, take a chair and sit outside, I guess, unless you're in the snow or something. But if it's relatively warm out, then, or you can take a coat, go sit outside. The more you can be outside, the better. And I know that is also very difficult right now. So when you sit down to have your food, you could even play a game with somebody. If somebody's there quarantined with you, you guys could talk about, what does that food feel like when you put it in your mouth? Really, like, what do you taste? Do you taste salt? Do you taste a vegetable? If you made like a soup, are you tasting the vegetable, or does it just taste like broth? Do you taste it? If you have a problem with tasting things, you can still feel the texture. So what is the texture like in your mouth? And these are important things. It's part of this mindful eating process. You'll enjoy eating more. You'll feel fuller than you do if you just sit and eat a whole bag of chips. And you'll be happier at the end of the day with what you've eaten and how you've interacted with somebody that you're eating with. So protein tends to be a pretty big topic of conversation, especially in Parkinson's. Protein is important, and especially if you're losing weight, we need to make sure you are getting enough protein in your diet. There are a lot of sources of protein other than meat products and dairy. There's nuts and legumes, but remember that spacing it out, if you're on levodopa, spacing your protein out from your levodopa is important. We don't want to reduce the effectiveness of your medication. And I know that can be very difficult if you're taking medication very frequently. Do the best you can. You'll know if you're very sensitive to the protein interaction with the levodopa. It's pretty obvious. Most people are pretty well aware of it. But it is important to still get some protein and space it out. So a very I think it's a forgotten grain or thing that we don't think about is quinoa. And I don't know, you might think, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with that. You just boil it and you can put whatever spices you want on it. And the good thing about something like that is that it's actually a whole protein, which means that you're getting all the amino acids that you need from just that one grain without having to enter the animal product in there. So that's great. If you can, I have seen it because I started looking around too. My grocery stores are sold out. There is some online, certain websites, Amazon and stuff, I was able to get it there. So A little bit of creativity, but I think we're starting to see more of that stuff pop up on shelves, at least here, than there was before. Lentils are great. Beans. Don't forget about your leafy vegetables. Spinach actually is a wonderful source of protein, and a good one if you can buy fresh spinach. If you can't buy the fresh, buy the frozen. And here are just some of the plant-based proteins that I think sometimes are forgotten. Again, spinach, kale, corn, and corn is your whole grain as well. Cauliflower, I'll give it to you. Cauliflower has not been my favorite, but I have learned how to incorporate it into certain foods, into soups, and puree it, so that I actually don't even really taste the cauliflower, but it's in the food. Peas are a wonderful source of protein. They're great. Mushrooms, if you can get mushrooms and you like them, chopping them up into a hamburger really finely. If you cook them first and then put them in a hamburger, you can reduce the amount of meat you're actually eating and boost your veggie intake at the same time. So that's great. If you can't actually make these things, look for some veggie burgers in the frozen aisle that don't have a lot of added stuff. So that's just what you want to look. You want to look at the ingredients and just make sure there's not a lot of added stuff in there. Like what you want is vegetables mainly, so that you're not getting a lot of other things. Here's some other sources of protein. These are more animal based, so steak, chicken, fish, which is great if you can get it. The amaranth is also, it's kind of like quinoa. It's an older grain. I have a harder time finding amaranth than quinoa, and I just think quinoa is a little bit more straightforward. But they're both great ways to get a good plant-based protein. Buckwheat, that I actually have seen more buckwheat. I think people didn't really want it, so it was on the shelves. Eggs, chickpeas are wonderful, and you can mash those up and put them in a lot of different stuff without tasting them. One way I like to incorporate vegetables into more meals is by putting it in breakfast. Most people don't eat vegetables for breakfast, or we don't tend to think of that, at least in the United States, as much. And one of an easy way to do that is throw some veggies in the pan that you like. They can be frozen, they can be left over from dinner the night before, and add a couple eggs. And you kind of have like a frittata, which is great. And you get a really good, solid breakfast that way with some vegetables and with some protein. One of the questions that I knew would come up is, what can I cook? What can I cook? What can I make out of my pantry? Well, everybody's pantry looks a little different, so I think that's a difficult thing to kind of address in a big group, unless you have like specific ingredients. But things that I kind of lean on, especially, I don't know, I love cooking, and I'm getting pretty tired of cooking all the time, every single meal for everybody. I'm kind of getting over it. So I've had to kind of back off on some of the meals that I cook, but crock pot meals are great. You can make large quantities and save it, so I think that's one of the keys right now is what can I reuse? Let's just reuse everything, repurpose it. You had vegetables last night, you had pasta last night. You can put that with eggs in the morning and make a frittata out of that. You can maybe make something, a sauce in the crock pot with some ground beef and some veggies that you have, and put that over your pasta that you had last night. Soups, I think, also are great. Roast your vegetables and put some salt on this one, or maybe less salt, but some spices on that one, and put a different kind of spice on this one. And then you have two different types of carrots that you've roasted, and you can change up the flavoring a little bit. The overnight oats, I think, are really, really great way to have something in the morning that you don't have to worry about. You put some oats. If you type that into Google, it comes up with 1.5 trillion recipes. So you can put the ingredients that you like in there, but they just sit overnight, and then you have breakfast in the morning and you don't have to do anything. I think that there's a misconception that healthy and delicious has to be super complicated. It doesn't. If you get those fresh vegetables, you know, one of the keys that I've found that has helped recently is I really kind of like try to prep them when I get them. So it's a little bit more work up front, but then throughout the week, oh, look, oh, that's so great. We can just grab that carrot and we can just have that. Or look at that, my lettuce, my spinach is already chopped up, and now I can like throw it in a bowl with whatever leftovers I had last night, and bam, a salad or something of that sort. If you can buy the pre-cut, if cutting vegetables is difficult for you, buying the pre-cut veggies is always a good option. They might be a little bit more expensive, but if you can do it, that would be good. You can also chop a lot while sitting. I sit a lot when I chop my vegetables. My counter's at a weird height and it hurts my back, so I sit. So you can sit while you do that. You could even sit, you know, if you really want to watch that task force briefing again, you could even mindlessly chop vegetables while you watch the task force meeting. Just don't cut your finger. Cook larger portions. So if you're going to be cooking pasta, if you're going to be cooking some brown rice, if you're going to be cooking the quinoa or lentils, make a big portion at the beginning and keep it for the week or for the next 3 days, and it kind of takes off some of the burden. You can add it into every meal. So I think, again, I really want to stress that perfection's not the goal. My diet and most people's diet isn't that perfect triangle, okay? We're going to deviate from that, and right now, now is not the time to be really hard on yourself about that. All right, so you had some Doritos. Next time you go to the store, don't buy them. You know, just little changes here and there, but don't carry around that guilt, and don't be so hard on yourself about it. Make small changes. So I know constipation and the GI issues can be very difficult, and if you're not getting, you know, maybe you found something that worked for you and you're not able to find it right now. Do the things you can, you know, make sure you're drinking enough water. That's super important. Again, fruit with the skin on, dried fruit, plenty of vegetables. The fiber through vegetables is super important. And get your protein from legumes, like, you know, lots of beans. Try to eat some nuts and seeds if you can. Again, the exercise and movement will help with constipation. So do what you can. I know it's limited. I know you can't get to your neuroboxing class or other classes that you were able to get to, but if they're offering a Zoom class or an online class, do that. There are lots of things on YouTube that you might be able to find. I want you to be safe and do things that are only safe for you, but movement is important. I think there was you know, I guess diet can't ever be talked about really in terms of Parkinson's without addressing this really exciting part of research going on right now in Parkinson's about the gut and brain axis. So the theory behind that, I'm sure you guys have all at least heard snippets or, you know, how can Parkinson's start in the gut? But this is kind of the theory behind it, is that you have the gut, in your gut, you already have a lot of bacteria. So that's normal. And depending on what you eat and where you live and lots of different things, your bacteria in your gut is different than somebody else's. However, there have been plenty of studies looking at the diversity of that bacteria in your gut and how that changes depending on what different disease state you might have. So there's a lot of evidence for this in neurology with multiple sclerosis, even looking at autism and epilepsy, things like that, but also in Parkinson's. So the theory is that there is an imbalance of this bacteria in your gut, which causes inflammation, neuroinflammation, which increases the production of alpha-synuclein, which are those abnormal proteins that we find in the brains of people with Parkinson's. Now, the all-important vagus nerve here, this nerve goes from your gut to your central nervous system. And so there's some theories out there that say these alpha-synuclein proteins travel from your gut up through the vagus nerve and into the CNS. into the central nervous system, into your brain, and then they proliferate in your brain and leads to Parkinson's. So this is not 100%, but this is kind of where the research is right now, and more people are looking at that. There have been so many studies. I was just actually reading up on how many different studies and different types of studies there have been in the last 15 years about the gut-brain axis, and they've looked at the different microbacteria in people's guts and compared Parkinson's to normal, and it's kind of all over the place, in all honesty. There's not one that's emerging that's completely obvious. So we're still waiting for a lot of this research that's been done in mice and other animals to be translated into humans. But we do know that the more diverse that bacteria is in your gut, usually correlates with an overall less inflammatory state in your body. So you get that diverse gut bacteria from eating lots of plant-based foods, lots of fiber from plants and fruits, and limiting processed foods. So we are hoping that as this research progresses, we'll be able to diagnose Parkinson's earlier and maybe even then come up with new therapies. So the current recommendations, I mean, what you can probably read about a bunch of things: prebiotics, probiotics, a more specific diet, and really none of that stuff has been proven 100% yet. So I wouldn't run out and go buy a bottle of probiotics to help with your Parkinson's, but those are the things that are being looked at. So a diverse and healthy diet is really what we can recommend at this point, and I think will make you feel overall better. If you feel better overall, you'll move more. Your depression, pain may improve as well, and that might help your Parkinson's motor and non-motor symptoms. So limit your processed foods and try to do the best you can with eating whole foods that you can find right now. So I always thought this was pretty funny. We in America, we've come up with all these different ways to have like healthy food when we could just actually eat our vegetables and fruits, right? So try not to wrap your cheeseburger and french fries in a fruit pie and low-fat tortilla. Just maybe forgo the tortilla and the fruit pie. Have your cheeseburger and french fries once, and then get some veggies on there too. So remember that a small change is still a change, and so recognize that for yourself. If you did serve out those chips into a bowl and you ate one serving size, and yesterday you ate the whole bag, say that was a step in the right direction. Let's keep doing that. If you go to the grocery store tomorrow and you're like, I don't know, I've never really tried kale, maybe I should, and you come home and you try kale, that's great. Give yourself a pat on the back. Small steps. I think we set unrealistic goals sometimes, and it really hurts our ability to make any progress. You have to have small steps in mind and give yourself a round of applause for the small steps that you do accomplish, especially right now. It's really difficult. All right, so that is my PowerPoint. I don't know if there are a lot of—
Yeah, there's actually a few questions here that I want to go back to. Some of them were related to the dairy questions. So,
Okay.
All right, so let's see. We had one person that wanted to know about A1 versus A2 dairy products, also goat cheese, sheep dairy, and then right below that it was, yes, please discuss sheep cheese, goat milk versus regular dairy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think that I have not seen any research specifically addressing Parkinson's and different types of dairy, in terms of like sheep versus goat versus cow. The main study that's even shown any detriment with dairy and Parkinson's was with cow dairy, and the thought was that maybe the cows were exposed to the pesticides, so pesticides were in the milk, which then may have promoted a Parkinson's state. So I don't know if there's any, I haven't seen any data specifically suggesting sheep versus goat versus cow dairy. I would say limit whatever you can. But I do think that things like Greek yogurt and things are healthy. I wouldn't make that your whole meal, or your whole, what you lean on all the time, but having yogurt, plain yogurt is a healthy alternative, way to get protein, way to have a snack.
What do you think about the dairy alternatives? Like it's very popular now to drink oat milk, especially with kind of the bad rap almond milk has gotten, what it does to the environment. And then there's hemp milk and there's soy milk, all these different alternatives. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of alternatives, and I think that it depends on what you're using the milk for, right? So I think in cooking and in eating, thinking about what you're trying to get from what you're eating. So if you're making a recipe and it has milk in it, probably substituting in one of those plant-based milks is good for you, really good for you. And it's going to basically do the same thing that a dairy product's going to do. If you're drinking a glass of milk, which I actually wouldn't recommend, having almond milk or oat milk is going to taste different than a glass of cow's milk if that's what you're going for. I do like some of those alternative milks. They offer a way to get to decrease your dairy intake, but still kind of get the same thing out of it. So again, having a little bit of dairy I think is okay, but I would limit it somewhat. Also, an interesting fact is that many people who are not lactose intolerant when they're younger become lactose intolerant as they age. So there's a significant portion of the American population that is lactose intolerant by the time they're 65 plus. And so dairy may not make you feel particularly good, especially if you're already constipated on top of that. Then adding something into your diet that is you're not digesting particularly well may complicate things. So I think limiting dairy, I think alternative milks are a good option. And right now, I think something that's super important right now is that most of those are shelf stable until you open them. So that's really great, because if you can't get to the market except every 3 weeks or month, having an open container of milk for that long sometimes doesn't go so well. So, having a shelf stable box of cashew milk, oat milk, macadamia milk, whatever it is, may be a good option for you.
Fabulous. We also had a question from someone in regards to caffeine with someone with Parkinson's.
There's been varying bodies of evidence about the caffeine and whether it's helpful in Parkinson's or not. I think caffeine is fine. I don't tell people this from caffeine unless it makes you feel bad. So I think that's one of those things that you have to gauge for yourself and know how your body feels on it. I wouldn't sit around and drink coffee all day, and it is important to get clear liquids like water in your diet. That will also help with the constipation. So make sure that you're getting enough water, but caffeine's okay to be having.
All right. One of the thoughts that I was concerned about is food's impact on energy. So a lot of people are already struggling with having enough energy, they're fatigued. So what do you recommend when we're trying to balance energy in and energy expended?
Yeah, it's a good question. And right now, we're everybody's all over the map with what you can do and where you can get exercise and all that. But I do think that one of the most important things that contributes to energy problems in your food is limiting your processed foods. Processed foods will drag you down. I don't think that we really realize it when we're eating them. And if you eat them a lot, then you're just like, this is just how I feel. I don't know. But most people do feel better if they can get away from those processed foods and eat more whole foods. Your energy will be higher, in a good way. You won't be, so what we don't want to do is just put in more calories without the energy expenditure. So a bag of Cheetos is just more calories in without anything good for you. Growing calorie bubble over here, and you're not able to put out the calories. But even if you could switch it out for some nuts, those have a lot of calories, yes, but there's a lot of healthy benefits to it as well. And the energy expenditure out, do what you can. I walk around your house if you can do that when your medication is working. At least it's a place that and so you won't trip. Make sure everything's out of the way. Go outside if you're able to walk up and down your street if you live on a street where that's possible. Moving your arms is still energy expenditure. All of those things are important. So yes, we don't want to just pour in a bunch of calories that are the unhealthy processed calories and not put out any more energy. And you will feel better, I think, overall, if you limit your processed foods. Your energy will increase if you limit those processed foods.
Fantastic. Now, I kind of want to get away from the opposite of, eating and maybe focus on the problem of those who may struggle to eat, either because they've lost their sense of taste, they're dealing with apathy, depression, they may have slowness with chewing, problems with swallowing. So can you speak on that and how we can help assure they're getting adequate nutrition?
Yeah, that is a really difficult thing to deal with. Even when we're not dealing with this pandemic, that those complications of eating with Parkinson's can sometimes be just very difficult. Do you have a problem with taste or smell? Those two are interconnected. Sometimes people can find certain spices and things that actually do taste good or smell. They could actually smell. I recommend using spices. You don't want to just dump a bunch of seasoned salt on things, but different spices, and you'll be surprised at the different things that are out there. Those can sometimes be helpful. If you're having swallowing difficulties, ways to get vegetables. It depends, of course, how bad the swallowing difficulties are and what kind of diet you're on. But let's say you're on a pureed diet. There are lots of ways to get great vegetables and smoothies that taste good. And actually, in smoothies and things like frozen fruit would be fine. Those types of things. Yogurt. Again, we got back to the yogurt. It can be a good texture for some people with swallowing problems. Let's see, the apathy and depression. That's going to be worse right now, right? For everybody. I don't know. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and make you raise your hand, but I think all of us can say, like, some days with this quarantine, that's like apathy and just kind of being bored is like, oh, I just can't do it another day. I get it. And that's going to make it more difficult for you to want to get up and be like, oh, let me go chop some carrots. I do understand that. And even getting out to the store. And as I said earlier, for me, it's been the grocery store is where I used to love going. Is just a place that I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore. But that's where it comes in, where eating less processed foods, eating more whole foods will help your mood. If you can take one step in the right direction, if you can overcome that apathy to walk out to your mailbox, if you can overcome that apathy to get up and cut that carrot, then you have to give yourself a pat on the back for doing that. If you have a caregiver or somebody, maybe work with them to try to help you get a few more vegetables, a few more fruits, and eat what you can. It does become very difficult with the depression and apathy sometimes. And make sure you're addressing those issues with your doctor too, when you do see, whether via telehealth or if you're going back in person right now. Depression and apathy are important to be treated. Any movement you can do, again, if you can get up and move a little bit, your depression, your mood will improve as well. So it's all very interconnected. And I feel like right now, the biggest difficulty is that all of the stuff that's like so important in Parkinson's movement and eating healthy, it's kind of all been taken away from you. So kind of these workarounds are going to take some time to figure out. And if you're finding yourself regressing right now in terms of motor symptoms, doing the best you can with the food and movement, I think will be really important. And being social, maybe that is a meal with somebody else, even Zoom or FaceTime. I know I'm getting tired of this interface too, but it is what we have right now, and loneliness can make all of those other symptoms so much worse. You know, the apathy, depression, all those things are so much worse. Try to eat with somebody, try to walk with somebody if you can, or, you know, those things. I don't know, it's hard to address all of those.
No, it's a loaded question because it's a lot of issues wrapped up in one question, but you covered it really well. And we're getting close to the end of our hour. So there's a couple more questions on here. One person wanted to know about the Boost Ensure, if that's recommended, and then maybe you can answer that. And then they also want to know just how to assure a good nutrition if you're kind of on a plant-based diet.
Yeah. So sorry, my internet I think cut out just for a second. So I heard whether Boost or Ensure are okay and recommended, and plant-based diet, making sure you're getting enough nutrition. So the Ensure and Boost, I mean, those are fine. My one problem with those are just that they have a lot of additives and sugar. Sometimes it's probably not needed. And so if you or your caregiver or a family member or somebody can actually go out and buy some ingredients for you and make a smoothie, it's probably a little healthier. That being said, if that's the way you can get the adequate calories and things, then go ahead and do that. In terms of having a plant-based diet and getting enough nutrition, actually really one of the only nutrients that you kind of, if you're eating a balanced plant-based diet, again, if you're going to be vegan and eat Cheetos, you're probably not going to have a very, very nutritious diet. But if you're mindful of what you're eating, B12 is something that you do have to make sure you're getting enough of, and you can take a supplement for that if you're completely plant-based. But overall, you'll be surprised at the amount of protein that you get from plants and plant-based foods, and you can actually do pretty well on it. So you do have to pay a little bit more attention to making sure that you're eating balanced, but you can certainly get enough nutrition, enough protein, enough energy from a plant-based diet to be healthy and to still have the energy to live and work out, or, you know, walk or do whatever you want to do.
Awesome. All right, we are almost at the end of our time. I don't know if there's any last questions, but this has been really wonderful and informative. So I really thank you, Dr. Presant, for being on here with us. And for those of you who are listening, we do have another conversation coming up on Monday of next week that you might be interested in with Dr. Lori Mishley on patient-reported outcomes, research, and PD progression. And there may be some additional comments in that presentation related to nutrition as well. So I thank you everyone for joining us today. If you could all turn on your cameras if you can, because I think we have this tradition of doing the wave to everybody. So if you turn on your cameras and we do a wave to everybody, we will say goodbye. And once again, thank you, Dr. Presant.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so
all
much.
Have a wonderful day today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.